Furthermore, the lockdown currently closes all avenues of training and assessments. After the lockdown, obviously, there will be a lot of people like yourselves having projects that needs to be completed, and therefore you have to recruit welders fast. And with this technology, we can certainly assist you there. And then also with this new technology, we definitely can lighten the cost of pre-screening of potential employees. So what does SRW currently offer? It is the new era, as I've just said, in training and assessments. We are using simulated and live weld technology, which obviously enables you to improve your training as well as assessments in record time with enormous cost savings to your company. The training, or one of the biggest advantages, is training can be presented in-house at your fabrication facility, or should you prefer, we can actually do that at the institute. Simulated weld technology also can provide pre or objective pre-assessments in record time, therefore saving you both time and money. Whilst you are training or being assessed, the machine or the equipment that we are using has got audio coach capability that provides you guidance with your weld speed, angles, aim, contact to tip work distance, arc length, and the position of weld. Now, this is all recorded and it is displayed on a touchscreen monitor, which can be viewed by an external instructor or even you as the student or as the inspector whilst assessing your welds. And then the other big advantage is, as I've just mentioned, is that you can get immediate feedback on the skill of the candidate to the inspector. And that will allow you to immediately tell either the student or the potential employee to rather become a hairdresser rather than to pursue a career in welding. So what does it all entail? As I've just said, it is virtual welder training. It is not augmented. So basically, through the hood, the welder will actually see a simulated, almost live weld. You've got the computer-aided comment during welding. You can include instructor-guided comment as well, and it's a question of simply plugging a couple of earphones and a mic. You can, once you've done the simulation and you've achieved the required mark, which is roundabout estimated about 70%, you can then actually do a live weld using the exact same equipment and the exact same variables are being monitored. We can also customize your training capabilities. So if you want a welder to weld, for example, on an exotic material in a specified welding position, for example, with a mirror, that can be achieved. As I said, we can do both virtual and live welds using this computer, which will do the assessments in either case. Whilst welding, you get constant facilitator feedback on whether you are welding or testing. And obviously the other advantage is you can take that information from the computer, you can put that onto a flash drive, run off to a computer, and you can have a digital copy available for yourself or for the trainee. What are the benefits to you as the employee, to the employees of your company? They get a greater understanding and they can master their techniques. You get very high certification rates and obviously very low costs. It is capable of using the latest welding equipment. So this equipment, whatever you have got in your facility, it's a question of putting in an adapter plug and you can still use this equipment with your equipment. You are exposing welders and prospective students to advanced manufacturing technologies that are used in industry today. There's much more opportunities for guided skills practice. And as I've said, is if, for example, you need to do a very specific weld, you can actually train or assess your welder way in advance before you actually do the actual testing. And then obviously with this technology, your welder will be better prepared to demonstrate their skill, and it will also enables experimental and personalized progressive learning. In one of my other slides, I've also discussed where you take away the anxiety factor from the candidate, which now concentrates more on doing the weld as to fearing that a assessor or a instructor is overlooking where he's doing something wrong. So what is this technology in assessment? You can choose either to test the welder on a simulated weld before you subject him to a live weld, where obviously, as you can see, there's a huge cost saving by just doing a simulated weld, because you hardly use, well, you don't use any consumables. You get a very fast, objective, computerized assessment, and as I said, that's immediately available upon the welder completing the weld. It's compatible to use with company-specific procedures. Although the equipment is currently loaded with 47 different welding procedures, you can still go and use your own procedure, which is a question of us just putting it up on the machine, and your welders can be trained and tested using your procedures. There's quick results, enabling your employer or the employees or the employers to offer employment timelessly. You can requalify your welders to new company procedures. So whenever a variable is changed, and instead of you going about at very high cost teaching or testing each and every welder, you simply load the WPS on your computer, you test the welder on the simulator, you get immediate results, and you can then subject him to the new test under the supervision of your inspector. And then also last, you can, your training needs analysis before booking for training. So from that, you can decide whether a welder is either going to become a plumber or whether you would like to send him to come and do actual live training. Okay, other benefits to you as the employer, as I've just said, it's fast, efficient, and objective computer assessments. So therefore, you've got no subjective marking from an instructor or a facilitator. It is attractive, it's very attractive from a financial point of view for both fabricators and individuals that are seeking certification. Simply, as I said before, and we will look at it later on, cost is the main thing, and the main cost lies in consumables, materials, time, and so forth. So why is this so attractive? First of all, we can have this equipment taken to your site, and we can do on-site assessments. We can reduce your travel and accommodation cost for your welders should you need to send them to the SRW. It also reduces production time, where in this case you don't have to take a welder off the shop floor for a whole day. You can pull him out for a half an hour, and he can actually do his assessment on the simulator. You've got to reduce time lost, as I've just mentioned, while your welders are being tested, because you don't need to release 5 individuals at a time. You can release them as and when they are being tested. Obviously, the big saving is the reduced cost of consumables and materials. There's mitigating environmental and safety concerns. And just to elaborate on that is, for example, fume, burns, heavy material falling on people, weld preparation where welders can actually get hurt. And then obviously you've got no need for welding inspector activities all the time, because as we have mentioned, that it is computer assessed. And then the last thing is you've got your permanent record. And how do we achieve that? Well, simply, we've got the RealWeld, which is a Lincoln product. And then we've also got Soldermatic equipment where we can actually go and do simulation welds and determine other variables other than the ones that we can actually achieve with the RealWeld. Process capabilities, Currently, the equipment is capable of doing manual metal arc. We can do MIG-MAC or gas metal arc, and we can also do flux cored arc welding. Unfortunately, the process is limited, and at this point in time, it cannot accommodate any gas tungsten arc welding. And as I stated before, the equipment is compatible for use with any of your power sources. What is the features of this equipment? You've got single pass capability in all welding positions. Then you've got multi-pass capability in positions fillet weld 1 through to 4. And also you've got on your groove welds flat, horizontal, and vertical. The machine is capable of having a 152 millimeter fixture or a 457 as standard for virtual testing. And the advantage of this is it produces longer welds, which actually replicates what can be expected of your welder to do in or under workshop conditions. And it is also capable of welding up to 25.4 or 1-inch plate. The only limitation again with this equipment, apart from the fact that it is not GTAW compatible, is that it is not compatible for positional pipe welding. Another big feature of this equipment is whilst you are training or actually being tested, the audio coach will provide you guidance on those 5 variables, which we will go to in the next slide. The audio cues can be turned on or off at any time. So if you feel that your welder is ready, you can actually turn off the cues and your instructor can then actually listen and see what the welder is actually doing. It also allows, as I said, instructor to listen and give further guidance to the welder. Your live weld analysis. This analysis, which is on the touchscreen, provides or calculates the percentage of time where your welder actually welds within those 5 parameters. Now, I'll quickly run through those parameters. It actually, one of them is the proximity of your torch to the weld. It is the speed at which you're welding. It is your contact tip to work distance or your arc length. It is the weld angle and then also your work angle. So if we look at that, first of all, as I said, it calculates all 5 parameters, which is then displayed. It gives you a percentage time parameter performance within that tolerance. So it calculates the percentage of time that your welder actually spends within those tolerances. And I will now explain that now where the welder performance versus the tolerance is assessed. And please bear in mind with this that once the welder has actually completed the weld, he can immediately go to the screen and all these are clearly displayed. And he can actually then self-assess where his current level is and what he should do to improve on his performance. So that's basically what your screen would look like. And if we just look at this, on the left-hand side here, you'll see at the bottom here, it says that the arc is on. And if I click on that button, it'll actually show me that the arc is off. So in this instance, this welder has actually done a live weld on this equipment, and that's why the arc actually tells me it's on. The red, amber, up to green shows me the percentage of all 5 parameters that have been recorded. So in this case, this welder has actually scored a 77, which is quite good. And for now, this welder can actually go and do a live test under the supervision of your inspector. These are the 5 variables, as I have mentioned, that are being monitored. So if we go and look at them from the bottom, if you look at your proximity, this welder is basically just off the 0. So as a percentage, it gives you the proximity is that he was basically all the way through within the tolerance that is allowed. On the second one there, you've got the travel speed, where again you can see that your welder was 97% within tolerance. Up there, contact tip to work distance, he had it perfect for the full weld. Your travel angle was absolutely perfect. And then obviously his work angle was a bit bad, where he only had 80%, and it actually gets measured in the degrees that he actually comes in to perform the weld. Now, if we just go down to the next slide, I can show you again, let's look at it from the top. If we look at his work angle, the green line at the top is the maximum tolerance that is allowed, and the bottom is the minimum. So in this case, the black line actually indicates what this welder was actually doing. So basically he was running at the very, very maximum. Then he exceeded that quite by far. He corrected, he came back, and he went right up the top of the maximum again. And obviously going back, that gives us the 80%. Going down for travel angle, he was 100% within the tolerance, and he actually ran around about 50% between the maximum and the minimum. And then obviously if you look at your contact work distance again, and your your travel angle and the proximity of the weld is also fairly within tolerance. So if your welder just looks at this screen, he immediately knows that he's got a problem with that. And that's where he then, with his next simulated weld, can actually try and improve on his weld, with obviously not welding a real coupon, but going back onto simulation until he gets it spot on. Okay, so those are the touchscreen, as I said, what is also advantageous. It allows you to integrate additional videos. You can add in documents like your WPSs. You can add in company-specific welding procedures or requirements. You can insert images, and you can also include a curriculum like the QCTO or the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, so that the learner or the welder actually knows how to enhance his learning. Live weld costs, which is always a big question that is being asked. If you look at a live weld, why it is so expensive is you've got the time of your instructor. Now, normally you would work 10 welders per an instructor. With this, because you've got audio comment, you don't need an instructor full-time in the booth. You've already got one. There is no material that has to be cut, prepared, used, and then actually goes into the scrap bin. You don't need to prepare your samples, so therefore there is more time to weld. You don't use any consumables. Your electricity consumption will come down significantly. Preparation of samples for assessments don't need to be done now, except when you're actually attempting a live weld. The mere fact that you now have got objective assessment and reports, which eliminates subjective assessments where conflict normally arises between the inspector and the welder, and obviously you as the fabricator. And then also you eliminate downtime due to your inspectors being preoccupied assisting other welders. So just by looking at that, you can add some values to that, and you will see that it actually accumulates to quite a significant amount of money. With simulation or with using this equipment, as I've said, very, very limited instructor time. You've got an instructor in the booth at any time while your welder's welding. You're hardly going to use any material because you're only going to prepare a piece of material once you actually do a live weld. There is no preparation time. You hardly use any consumables. There is hardly any electricity consumption. You've got constant instructor audio feedback. You've got computerized objective assessments and reports. And as we've just seen in the previous slides, it is displayed for both the assessor, the inspector, and the welder to see, and you will eliminate the question of arguments. And then obviously the biggest factor is there's no downtime whilst you are actually training. So by taking this all into consideration, there is around about a 50% reduction in cost using a simulated live weld versus training or assessing a welder on a real piece of equipment. Okay, the other thing, training and certification can be done, as we have mentioned before, using your approved company welding procedures. You get a greater understanding and mastery of special welding needs at your company. As I say, exotic materials comes in big time. You get higher certification rates because you are eliminating anxiety on your welders. It's capable of using the latest technology, training on exotic materials without any cost implications. And then the other advantage is this training is available on site, and this equipment can also be used to assess your welders on site. So the savings are inevitable simply because you enhance and you supplement traditional welding training. You're going green, therefore no environmental concerns. You're saving money on base material, consumables, electricity, and obviously the big one is waste. You support pre-employment recruitment and weld screening, which in its own is an extremely high cost saving. And then the very key one is that objective skills-based welder evaluation. So in conclusion, your organization can basically now focus on improving weld quality by improved welding techniques employed by welders who fully understand the variables that produces a good quality weld. And that will all come with minimum cost and effort on your and your welder's behalf. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time. And should you require any further information, please feel free to go to our LinkedIn, Facebook page, or visit our website. Or should you rather prefer, you can contact me on my email at etienne.nel@siiw, and I will gladly be eager to answer your questions. I thank you for listening to me this afternoon. Thank you.
Etienne, there's a couple of questions from the chat. Maybe you can answer those first. The first one was, is this all accepted by Masita, and how much of theoretical training is done online?
If you're going to go through the QCTO curriculum, it is not, well, let me just answer the first one. Through the Masita, this is not funded by the Masita. It is purely to train a welder, and should you enroll on the QCTO program, the theory must be done by a facilitator, and it must be assessed by a facilitator. This equipment is purely for the practical component of your training, and it is permitted by the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations to use simulation instead of exposing the trainee to a workplace environment.
And then, Etienne, there was another one. Does it allow for pulsed current? Does it simulate the defects, e.g. lack of fusion, arising from deviation from any of the 5 parameters? What do you mean by proximity of the weld?
Yeah. Proximity of the weld is how the welder actually goes in. So that would indicate the torch angle from both angles. So basically, is he pushing or is he pulling the electrode? and the other one is the degrees that he actually comes in from the side, specific in a fillet weld. This equipment cannot assess defects in the weld, and that's why we recommend that we first use virtual welder training technology, where we can actually get a good idea as to what the capabilities of this welder is. And only then will we take him onto this equipment where we will improve on those 5 variables.
Okay. Are there any other questions? The only thing, Etienne, was the website address. Mark points out that it should be saiw.co.za on your last slide.
Oh, oh my apologies.
Let's see, there's a couple of questions here from Shane. If you can.
Shane?
Unmute.
Hi, Shane.
Sorry, can you hear me? Okay. I watched it yesterday and I watched the presentation today, Etienne. I'm still a little confused.
Yep.
Does this, say I'm sitting in Cape Town, now I want to do this course myself.
Yes.
Do I do this through my laptop, or do I go to the SAI Institute here in Cape Town, or because you said you can use your own machinery? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. What I mean by that is when you look at that piece of equipment that I've showed you the picture of, that gets plugged into a real power source. So for example, if you've got a power source at your factory and I'm down in Cape Town, I would actually bring along my machine and I will plug it into your power source, and we will do the weld using your power source. But everything will be recorded and monitored using my equipment. Unfortunately, you cannot do this remotely because you're going to need, first of all, a facilitator or instructor to set up the equipment for you.
Yeah.
And then also, once you have completed your welds, for him to go back and actually, together with yourself, give you more feedback and ways of improving where you've actually gone wrong.
All right. So at this moment, if I wanted to do it here in Cape Town, it's basically like you set up a course date when, let's say, the branch here can get 10 people together minimum, or a maximum 10, and then you would physically drive the machine or fly the machine down with the operator, and you will sit and train us.
Correct. But what I will do in a case like that is I'm not just going to bring down, for example, the RealWeld, the actual picture that I've showed you. There will also be virtual reality equipment that will come along. So we will first take the welder mainly on virtual reality, where we can do a full-on assessment and see what defects are there. Is there lack of fusion? Is the guy, getting porosity? Does he get a lot of burn through it? Doesn't he get full penetration? And then once we've mastered that using simulation, we will then take him onto the RealWeld, where we will plug in your equipment and we will subject him to those 5 variables.
Okay, thanks. That's clearer. Thanks, Etienne.
Pleasure, Shane.
And then, Etienne, there was another question on the chat. How does payment work? Do you charge per delegate for pre-assessment, or do I rent your machine per day?
John, that preferably we will charge per student, because that would involve, the issuing of the report and actually printing of the report. But should you get companies that, do have, let's say, for example, in excess of 15 to 20 welders, we can always, between the company and ourselves, negotiate a price which is acceptable to both parties.
Then, Herman, I see you raised your hands. Do you have a question?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, you just broke away. I just want to mention, I think Etienne mentioned it in his presentation, that the International Welder and the IIW they also recognize the simulation of the simulators to be used during the International Welder certification. So I think in this case, there will be a lot of benefit to the companies that's really remotely situated. Then we can go there and do the certification with the guy.
Well, thanks, Herman.
Are there any other questions that you'd like Etienne to answer while we're online? Okay, I think that's it. Thanks very much, Etienne, and until next week's webinars, stay at home and stay safe.
Thank you, John, and thanks for all our participants. Much appreciated, and I'm glad I could have been of help.